We're going to hear our presenters from the Mayor's Innovation Delivery team. We have Charla, Daniel, and Ross. So everyone give them a round of applause. Here we go.
Thanks for having us. We're glad to see all of you. I know you all care about social service delivery, which is why you're all here. Pizza didn't have anything to do with that. I'm going to tell you a little bit just about myself first. I've been with the Mayor's office for about 3 years now. I lead the innovation delivery team there, focusing on big challenges that the city faces. The Mayor's picked some different priority areas for us. Some of the first ones were around small business, improving just city operations broadly across the city. Energy efficiency was one. We actually did some technology things on that, which I'll share with you in a minute. Most recently, we've been focused on social service delivery, so we'll talk more about that, as well as reducing youth violence. That's clearly an issue in the city. It's something we're just starting to work on and have great partners on that already. Before the city, I worked at McKinsey for about 6 years, so I have a management consulting background. So really trying to bring some of that consulting to the city, which is really what the innovation delivery team is for the city. It's the Mayor's internal consulting team. I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves as well.
Sure. I'm Daniel Riff. I've been with the team for about 2.5 years now. I was initially working on the small business side, and that was one of our priorities. Before joining the team, I worked with Heartland Alliance as a supportive housing case manager.
Hi, I'm Charla. As I mentioned, I'm with the Mayoral Fellow, so I'm just here for the summer. I'm currently getting my master's in public affairs from the University of Texas at Austin. Really excited to be here for the summer. And so it's been great to work with the innovation team on this project.
So very quickly on this chart, we kicked this off about 3 months ago, our focus on social service delivery. Talked about a lot of different priority areas in the city. This one came up as a really interesting one. City spends a lot of money on social services. There's a lot going on around the city on social services, but we really weren't sure how well we were delivering them. Just from the stories we've had and from going out in the city, it was clearly a challenge and an opportunity to improve how we deliver social services. And that is not just the city of Chicago itself. I'm talking about the city. This is all the organizations in the city that deliver social services. We've talked to a lot of them. And there's opportunities for the entire city to work better and think about how we deliver social services. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. We are working very closely with the Department of Family and Support Services. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here today, but are a great partner, excited about the project. Really do want to talk today about ideas that we can get from more of a tech side and applications to support social service delivery. A lot of the stuff we focused on, I'll give you a couple examples here, have been around process improvement. So one of the things we did was launch the City Small Business Center. It was one of the Mayor's big launches in the last couple of years. Really, this is the Mayor's small business strategy. It's an operational improvement program around the city, but also thinking about how we leverage all of our neighborhood resources. So thinking about all the chambers of commerce out there, how do we actually get them all working with us and partnering with us to improve small business services across the city. We did launch a new website. It's a slightly different interface from the city's website. We were trying to test something different. This is something that Do It actually really helped us with, to really try something a little bit different. If people have had a chance to look at it, we'd love your input. This is something that we continue to work on and strengthen. One of the other projects we worked on was energy efficiency. I think this will be really interesting for you guys. So at the city, when you sell a home or buy a home, you're required to disclose your energy bills. It's one of the things you got to disclose. It's been in the ordinance for years. The process was a paper process. You submit a form, it fills out, goes through all the process. ComEd gets it, some customer service guy looks at it, eventually gets it to the buyer of the home. At this point, you've already bought the home and closed on the home. It wasn't helpful in making your decision. Sure, it's good information to have. That was clearly the problem. We wanted people to think about energy efficiency because that was one of our priority areas. And so we put this online. And so now it's linked to MLS. And so on MLS profiles, instead of going through this entire paper process, someone installing their home can actually just fill out an online form, and they actually get this report, and it attaches directly to the MLS listing. And so as you're looking at listings, you can see monthly costs of your gas and electricity. Slow uptake so far. I think about 10% of new listings are actually opting to do this. It's not required. You can still use the paper process, but about 10% of new listings are opting to do this. we'd love input that any of you have. I heard some folks here are interested in sustainability on how you get that scaled up. Because I think as soon as you hit a tipping point, it'll just be like having pictures on a listing, right? You're not going to buy the home that doesn't have any pictures or go look at the home without pictures. I think it'll be the same with energy information, similar to HOA information, right? You expect that up there if you're going to be paying those bills. Yeah.
Is this also broken down for, I guess, high-rise buildings and how they can show,
Yeah.
like, by apartment?
So some of them don't have to disclose gas because it's common. But when it's not common, you'd have that information. And this is just for sales, so not rentals, but for sales. But so really exciting, great information. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it afterwards. Today we will focus on social service delivery. Daniel and Charlotte are both working on that, so I will let them talk a little bit about what we're working on.
Thanks. So why focus on social service delivery with this new priority area of ours? In short, there's such a huge demand for it in Chicago. The city is doing a lot in this space, but as you can see from these numbers, and these are all City of Chicago residents, there's a lot of work to be done. So we wanted to see what we could do to address all these challenges. So this is what the city is doing at this point. The city directs over $200 million into this space right now. A lot of that money is going into children's services. A lot of that is Head Start funding. You also see homeless services is a huge chunk of it. Youth, which is more adolescent. Some seniors, some workforce. But there's a lot of city funding going into this space already. So we wanted to take a look at what the city is doing directly as well. So what you just saw was all of the city's delegate agencies who were funding, who were supporting. There are 6 centers across the city that are actually city centers. They're called community service centers. People walk in every day with basic human service needs. They need shelter, they need housing, they need food. And these are smaller locations. You can see each one has about 8 staff. And they see, it's a large range, but between 80 and 240 people a week come into these centers. This is an opportunity where we can really try to affect some quick changes here that can really benefit the population and maybe draw more people into these centers that could really benefit from the services that are there. As you can see, they're pretty well spread across the city, from uptown down to South Chicago. The main things that you can get here are rental assistance, a referral to a shelter for that night. You can learn about affordable housing options. You can sign up for public benefits. These are really locations where people come when they're in crisis. That's really the population that we see. And so there are a number of challenges that we're running into as we seek to improve these centers and try to get the right services to the right people that are in need. How do we empower residents to better support themselves? How do we equip them with those tools? How do we efficiently connect people to the resources? Clearly, there's a lot that's out there. You saw how much funding we're putting out there. There are so many more organizations that have no affiliation with the city that are doing great work around Chicago. How do we make these connections? How do we give service providers more of the tools they need? And how do we know who's doing a good job? How do we know who we should be sending people to? And also, when we do make connections for people, how can we increase the chance that they actually show up and follow through on this? So I wanted to give you a sense of some of the people that we're seeing at these centers and some of the people that come into our partner agencies as well. So these are examples of people that we've met when we've visited these centers. One individual came into a center after spending a night in a park because he had nowhere else to go and came in the morning seeking assistance for shelter. The caseworker called around to several shelters. None of them had availability for that day, so the caseworker asked if there's anywhere else that person can stay for the night. And he said there was, one place where he might be able to go for one night, and so she encouraged him to go there and to come back the next day, and they would try around and call again. Obviously, this is not an optimal solution. There should be somewhere for him to go. How can technology play a role here? How can we better match the shelter availability to the people who are in need, And maybe this caseworker, maybe the person sitting 2 doors down was making the same 5 calls to the same 5 shelters and already had that information. And maybe someone else knew of a couple more that had availability that night. How do we use tech to solve some of these issues? Another example, someone came in after losing her job and she wanted help paying rent. So she called 301, the city's non-emergency line, explained her situation. They sent her to a center where we have information sessions on our rental assistance program. So she went to the program. It turned out she didn't qualify. There are a lot of criteria for this program. One is that you can demonstrate that you'll actually be able to pay the next month after that. She couldn't meet that because she didn't have a job at that time. So she left pretty frustrated. She just, maybe she'd set aside a number of other things she had to do that day, came in and found out that there really wasn't any reason for her to go there. Is there a screener that we can have with better information so that people know where to go? Obviously, there's an issue with the information in the first place that she's getting from where she's calling. And is there just an app that people can easily search for the services that they need? One more that's more from the provider side. So if we have one of these staff at an agency, whether it's at our center or at another social service agency in the city, who has a client come in asking for help getting a job, that staff person knows of an agency, a workforce agency nearby that might be able to help them. So they send them over there, tell them a little bit about the program, and then don't hear anything from that person. They're not sure if that client was fully qualified for that agency's programs. They're not sure if that client actually followed through. If that client followed through, they're not sure if he ever actually got a job out of it. And maybe there are some other issues. Maybe he was stable in his apartment for now, but wants to make sure that he has enough income moving forward to be able to stay in that apartment. So there's just a lot of follow-up that goes on there. So in terms of the referral piece, is giving someone a handout with specific information, almost like a boarding pass. Here's your information, here's where to go, here's what you need. Something that's helpful in that situation. And on the provider side, how do we better track where these people are going and what impact are we having? So a lot of these questions, they might be ringing some bells in your head about other solutions that are out there. Charlotte will speak about some of the ones that we've come across.
If I can just jump in for a sec. One of the challenges, like if you give someone a referral sheet and say, here's the other organization, and it's just a sheet of paper, they're going to lose this thing. They're never going to get. So how do we actually, and a lot of these folks are homeless or close to homeless. Like how are you, what are you going to do for them that's going to help them get somewhere? Is there something we can do? The boarding pass idea was trying to think about how do you get someone just the right information that they need to encourage them to go to that next step? Right? Is there something, something that they're going to get when they get there? There's an interesting design competition with boarding passes, which is where I thought of it initially. And how do you design the ideal document, that's going to get somebody just the information they need to actually use it in a useful way. So to try to think about that, is there a useful way, whether it's a map and say, this is where you are now, this is where you're going. Anything, that kind of information to encourage somebody to take that next step.
I think we may skip one. Here we go. So we do want to highlight some of the resources that already exist in this space. A lot of you may be familiar with Purple Binder. It was started right here in this building in 1871. Purple Binder is a very robust tool to locate all kinds of community services, food assistance, rental, shelter, all kinds of things. However, at this time it's paid only, so there's no universal access. So the community at large isn't able to access it right now. Chicago Health Atlas is a similar web-based program. It's largely healthcare focused. It has a lot of really cool data. I actually encourage you to check it out in this space. But the information it has on these services specifically is a little bit limited and probably not as robust as some other tools. Direct to Food is a web-based program where basically people can find food assistance shelters. It's like a locator service. There is a counterpart to that for housing assistance called Direct to Housing as well. No Kid Hungry is a texting application. It's actually a national initiative. Basically, you can text food to 877-877, give your address, and it'll text you back a list of all of the food pantries in your area, their addresses and the hours of operation. This is really interesting because we do find that, especially with some federal programs to get people cell phones, a lot of people these days do have cell phones. A lot with smartphones, but definitely with texting capabilities. So this has the power to help a lot of people. So I think we can go to the next one. So to kind of wrap things up, how can you guys help us? How can you help the community service centers and social service delivery as a whole? So we're looking for some solutions to some of the problems that we've discussed. So how can we use technology to empower residents to better support themselves? How can we efficiently connect people to resources? As we've discussed, there may be programs all over the city. How do we make sure we're connecting people to the right ones, connecting them either in person or maybe using a web-based tool? How can we give service providers more tools to succeed? How can we determine which programs are successful? Are we really referring to the best programs or just the ones we know of off the top of our heads? And then how are we improving that follow-through and making sure people are getting the services they need in the long term that really solve their problems? So with that in mind, yeah, we'd love to try to convene a group. Maybe people who want to discuss these problems further might have ideas. So please do stick around after. But are there any questions right now?
I have one.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I did too, but Derek, you.
Gene, please.
So it's funny. We should definitely talk further. I mean, we're actually looking at. I feel like there could be some overlap with some of the other work that we're going to be doing. So.
Do it or?
Yeah, do it.
Okay.
But I don't know. I guess I could say that on the side too. But the Vacant and Abandoned Housing Project is just one project that we're working on, and we haven't really decided on an approach even for that project, let alone the other projects yet. And there, a lot of similar issues. So, yeah.
Have y'all been in contact with the Illinois Framework Project? I know one of their goals was to hook up all the state social service departments together, unemployment, DCFS. Are y'all doing sort of a similar thing, trying to interact with them?
We've spoken to some of the state agencies on a more local level, but we haven't spoken to the Framework Project, so we'll definitely look into that.
Yeah.
Is there currently like a mechanism to assess from like people who are actually beneficiaries of either public assistance or the other agencies, what they feel as far as what's working for them and what's not working for them? And specifically also maybe geared success stories. So for example, like the WIA program, people who have actually successfully gained employment after 30 days and that.
And there's a little bit of follow-up. It's not systematic. Like, how do we actually track everyone through different agencies? Or if they come through us, remember from somewhere else, we don't get that data back. So we have no idea. I get a number, but the number doesn't tell me anything. And it might not be accurate. And a lot of times numbers are, this is how many people I trained for a job. Well, because that's what I was paying them for. I don't know how many actually placed into a job then. And then how many actually retained the job. So thinking about that would be really valuable for us. How do we actually do that and connect all these different systems across agencies? Ideally, we'd love to get them all in the same system. And not going to happen anytime soon. Is there a way to short circuit that entirely and think of another technology you can put that's around it that actually connects information across agencies?
One of the ideas we had tossed around using technology for a solution like this was sort of almost like a kind of Yelp rating platform where maybe people could help each other and provide success stories. When we went to the centers, we found that people who were sort of waiting in line or in these discussions were really willing to help each other out. So really sort of creating an interface for them to do that. Of course, it's not going to be accessible to all people, but it's one of the things that we thought about might help people.
I think communication between people is going to be really important. I think our rental assistance program, the way most people find out about it is they hear about it from somebody else. Somebody else got some funding. They're like, oh, maybe there's some money available for me. Let me go check it out at the city. And then most find out they don't qualify for it. So then they leave disappointed. So we're actually disappointing more people than helping. So to get that information out there and really think about how do people know where to go and what to expect?
So a provider-oriented platform like that is called Southside Health. was invented here in Chicago, so you might want to take a look at that.
Yeah.
So the question I was going to ask is, so I think Binder has a relationship with DCFS in terms of, I think, a data sharing agreement with them. They have I think, a public way to access some of their data through the Chicago website. Yeah, so
service
Chicago, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, have you guys thought about expanding that at all? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of people that approach this problem and see the same sort of like lack of a solution. And I feel like I've seen a lot of, like you listed a bunch of people trying to solve the same problem over and over again.
Right.
You know, so is it about just picking a winner and just like giving a bunch of money, or like what is like? I mean,
there may be more. So as we started talking through this, we're like, well, why doesn't Purple Binder do that? Well, there's another idea for Purple Binder to build into their platform. So we kept coming up with other things like, well, why don't they do that? So it's more ideas for them to pick up, or whoever else wants it. I mean, think about, or working with them or partnering with them. I think there's a ton of opportunities to do the next thing beyond what they're already working on.
Yep. And the main issue that we've run into on the resource directory is that just the updating. That all of the ones that we named have been, maybe some of them are still up to date in some areas, but will fall out of date pretty quickly.
Yeah.
That's a problem for all tools.
So I used to sit next to Purple Binder here at 1871, and they hired, it was like a couple summers ago, they hired a bunch of people to go in and like manually look up and call all these places, because there's no other way to get that data. I mean, you can get it from various listings that exist elsewhere, but they're all stale and out of date. I mean, that's really a challenge. One approach I know they attempted was trying to get these places to take ownership of their own information. So if you are a restaurant on Yelp, if everyone is going to that page and saying, oh, like this, and saying, oh, we're ruining your place, you want to make sure that that place is now all of a sudden you feel like you should be in charge of taking ownership of that information on that page because it's your establishment, right? The same idea. I mean, I think it takes a lot of momentum, and you mentioned like a tipping point, right? To actually get people to take over their page, but that's a way that could, and I would maybe talk to them to see how well that panned out. But that seems like a way to do it.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, one question on slide data, was it 80 to 260
a week?
Going into 8? That's
per center.
That's per center.
Times 8 times 50.
Yeah, and that's current. And we think there's going to be a lot more. I mean, we're about to kick off efforts on rebranding the centers, and so we think there'll be a whole lot more coming into them in the future.
And now, when you say center, when somebody goes to Sally and asks for a month's rent up front, is that y'all's money or is that Sally's money?
So it depends on the program. So the rental assistance program that we're looking at is a grant from HUD that the city has that it disperses. It's really for emergency rental situations, though.
Yeah. Not Sally Mae, the Salvation Army.
Oh, okay. No, yeah, this is it's HUD money.
But when they go to Salvation Army and ask for that, that's Salvation Army money, not your program.
Yeah, right.
And so, what about? Have you tried coordinating any of those programs?
So I think that is definitely one of the challenges we're facing is how do we coordinate all the programs that are out there? And we brought together at roundtables agencies from around one of our centers. These are all within a very small radius. And they all raise their hand and say, well, this is my issue. I don't know how to do this, or I'm stuck. I can provide this, but not this service. No one does it. The guy across the room is like, well, I do it, and I'm down the street from you. So the agencies themselves don't know what each other do. But so I think that is a potential role for the city to think of a smarter way to do that. How do we actually get that information and build those networks for resources? I think that they'd be helpful for everyone.
Get those people to talk to each other.
Right. Yeah.
Because like in the Irving Park neighborhood, the Hands to Help Ministry and the Food Ministry and a Friday Homeless Ministry that's through a place out in Arlington Heights, all meet and are there on Fridays doing things, and the homeless people know about it. They go to all three.
Yeah.
But then those people don't talk.
There's a coordination, absolutely.
So
it's clearly
some coordination, just the ability to network and talk to each other.
And and we can bring people together, and we will bring people together But again, that's not efficient. Is there a more efficient way of doing that? Right? But I think it's a great opportunity.
I thought what you were saying about people showing up to things and realizing they don't qualify and being disappointed was interesting. Are you working on any like pre-screening tools so people don't get discouraged and want to give up after having that frustrating experience?
Yeah, we are, and we're working on just making sure that everything we're telling people through 311 or through whatever means they're entering our system are aware of that information up front. I mean, there's also, when people come into the center, often they will wait for a while, and then after their wait, learn that the reason they're there, they're not eligible. So there's some quicker fixes for us on in terms of that and getting people that information much faster, so that they're not losing all the time.
Just to elaborate on the scope of that, when you're sitting in one of these rental assistance meetings, like in mine, over half left. So, I mean, because rental assistance is very hard to qualify for, they do then get referrals to other programs, but it is definitely something that could be streamlined because it's impacting a lot of people. So.
This is so interesting to me, so I'm just really excited about it. It seems that there's a preference to have people actually physically come into the office, and that's kind of seen as like a success measurement. Why is that seen that way, as opposed to maybe like some analytic data about like how many people certify for unemployment online, or are able to kind of fill out their forms completely?
Yeah, we want to change it. We care less about the number of people coming in. It's more about outputs. Today, the measurements are all about sort of people coming in because that's what's tracked. We do want to shift that over time to more of the outputs and really focus on here's the outputs we're delivering.
Some of that may too be, at least at the state agency level, the amount of work that's done per office dictates their funding level. Yeah. And so so there's been a push to centralize everything into a call center way out in the boondocks. And so that may be part of it because there's nobody able to answer the phone because they diminished the workforce completely.
As we're thinking about reporting, because this is an important issue in this space, as we think about reporting, we're tracking sort of in parallel how the state tracks it and then how we ultimately like to track it, because we do have to do that for a state funding perspective. If I only track, I gave 5 people jobs, but I worked with 60 people, right? They're not going to know any people I worked with if I only gave them the 5 people that I got jobs for. My funding was shrunk, even though I'm doing good work.
Questions? All right. Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you.